My son forged my signature, and tonight, I brought the receipts. Elaine Rothman stood before 50 guests, eyes locked on Tyler as the projector lit up behind her. The deed, the fake power of attorney, the hidden loan, all of it. He called it estate planning. I call it theft. Forks dropped. A woman gasped. Tyler's face turned to stone. This wasn't a party. It was a reckoning, and her son was the main course. All right, before we dive into this crazy story, do me a favor, subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. The porcelain scraped against the polished wood table with a screech sharp enough to slice conversation. My fork clinked to the floor. Tyler chuckled, not even looking at me. "She's had enough," he said, his voice pitched just high enough for the guests to hear, but low enough to pretend it wasn't meant to humiliate. Laughter rippled around the table, thin and brittle. One of his friends coughed into his napkin. Candace, his wife, barely glanced up from her Sauvignon Blanc. No one looked directly at me. I blinked once, then twice, then folded my napkin slowly, deliberately, and laid it across my lap again. My fingers trembled, not from age, not from weakness, but from restraint. Across the table, Tyler had already turned to refill his glass, unaware he had just started something he wouldn't be able to undo. The dining room was lit with soft amber chandeliers that flickered slightly with the central air. The smell of grilled meat and rosemary butter hung heavy in the room, mingled with the ghost of floral perfume and the faint scent of lemon furniture polish. A quiet piano playlist fluttered in the background, too polite to interrupt what had just happened. I could hear every tick of the grandfather clock in the corner, like it was counting down something. Tyler's home was all open floor plans and sterile elegance. I'd helped with the down payment, of course, my retirement fund a little lighter so his new beginning could shine brighter. I wondered if he even remembered that. 72, that was the number on my birthday cake tonight. The candles had barely finished burning when Tyler handed me a gift-wrapped box the size of a paperback. Inside, a 12-month gym membership. "Thought you'd like something useful," he said, loud enough for everyone to catch the joke. Candace added, "And they've got balance classes, so important at your age." They clinked glasses. I smiled like I hadn't just been told I was fragile, irrelevant, and in need of reshaping. No one saw the effort it took to hold that smile in place. My eyes flicked down the table. Guests from their social circle, all younger, affluent, polite. No one from my own life, not even my oldest friend Lorna. Tyler said it would be simpler, to keep it family only. It wasn't a celebration, it was a show, and I was the fading centerpiece. For the briefest second, I let my thoughts drift back. Tyler at age 6, tugging at my sweater in the hospital parking lot after his father's funeral. "I'll take care of you when I'm big," he'd whispered, face pressed into my coat. By 12, he was baking me Mother's Day cupcakes with misspelled frosting. By 22, he needed help with graduate school loans. And by 30, he needed capital for the startup that failed. I always said yes, even when it hurt. Even when I had to lie to the bank about my own expenses. Now he pushed my dinner away like I was an overfed pet. I reached for my wine, took a slow sip, and allowed the silence to stretch long enough for discomfort to bloom. Tyler finally noticed. "What?" he asked, feigning innocence. "We're just trying to look out for your health, Mom." "My health?" He said it like an accusation. I met his gaze. "Of course," I said evenly. "Always so thoughtful." He smiled, mistaking my composure for surrender. I leaned back slightly, unlatched my handbag from the back of the chair, and placed it beside my plate. My fingers found the cool edge of the envelope almost instantly, nestled just beneath my phone and hand sanitizer. The thick ivory cardstock felt heavier than it should. Final. Precise. I set it on the table next to my wine glass, one corner tucked discreetly under my napkin. No one noticed, but I did. The dining room sat quiet now. The hum of the dishwasher in Tyler's open-concept kitchen was the only sound, mechanical and steady like a heartbeat I no longer trusted. Candace had ushered everyone to the living room for cake. I stayed behind, alone at the long mahogany table Tyler inherited but never earned. The envelope sat next to my untouched steak, untouched like I'd been for years. I stared at the flickering candlelight catching the edge of my wine glass, and like an old scar flaring under pressure, the memories rose up, thick, hot, and uninvited. The first house I bought after Harold died was smaller than this one but filled with warmth. Tyler had been 8. I remember him coming home from school, cheeks windburned, dragging his backpack behind him like a tired dog. I worked 3 jobs that year, nights at the hospital gift shop, weekends at the library. I'd cook dinner in a pea-green kitchen and press quarters into his little palm for lunch money. He'd curl up beside me on the couch and say, "One day, I'll buy you a big house, Mom, with golden floors." Instead, I paid for his education, and then his wedding, and then the down payment on this forever home where I now sat as a tolerated inconvenience. Tyler didn't become selfish overnight. It was a slow erosion, like the sea taking the edge off a cliff. He stopped saying thank you, stopped asking before borrowing. The boy who used to run home with finger paintings now sent me Venmo requests labeled support. I once asked him, years ago, if he remembered when I sold my car so he wouldn't have to drop out of college. He looked at me like I was reciting someone else's life. "Mom, why do you always bring up the past?" he'd said, annoyed. "You act like I forced you to help." He didn't force me. That's what made it worse. I slid my hand into my purse and touched the edge of the envelope again. Its weight now felt like a decision already made. My phone buzzed. A text from Lorna. "You okay? Want me to come by?" She always knew when something was off, even without seeing me. Lorna had warned me about Tyler long before I was ready to hear it. Her words echoed from a lunch we had last spring, sitting by the lake with paper coffee cups. "You don't owe him a blank check for loving him, Elaine," she'd said, tapping her fingernail against her cup. "He's grown. If he treats you like a bank, stop giving out loans." Back then, I laughed her off. Now I wasn't laughing. I texted her back, "Come tomorrow. I need your eyes on something." From the living room, I heard Candace's voice slice through the air. "Elaine didn't want cake, babe. Let her rest." The way she said my name. Cold, clipped, performative. Like I was a chore that had outlived its utility. Candace had been icy from the first day I met her. She didn't hug. She didn't ask questions. She corrected Tyler in front of me, especially when I offered advice. Once, she joked about putting me in a cute little care cottage. I didn't laugh, neither did she. Tyler changed after marrying her, slowly but irreversibly. Softer edges dulled into sharp ones. His phone calls shortened, his tone grew managerial. Love became transactional. A plate too far, I thought, repeating last night's humiliation in my mind. The dishes clattered softly as I stacked them in the sink, the envelope tucked under my arm like contraband. I drove home in silence, headlights tunneling through the night like I was being delivered back to myself. The house greeted me with the smell of lavender floor polish and the echo of memories. I passed Harold's portrait, his tie slightly crooked, his eyes warm and permanent. "You'd tell me to stop this madness," I whispered to it. "Or maybe you'd say I waited too long." I walked to the bedroom, opened the small safe hidden behind my sewing cabinet, and pulled out the original will. My hands were steady now. The paper was crisp. My signature looped cleanly across the bottom. Tyler's name stood out like a red flag I'd ignored too long. I reached for a pen, set the will on the table, and whispered to the room, "Time to rewrite history." Next morning I heard a voice. "Mom, we've been thinking," Tyler said, pushing a glossy brochure across my kitchen island like it was a love letter and not a quiet eviction notice. "This place, Oak Haven, it's beautiful. Clean, secure, no stairs." Candace chimed in from behind her almond milk latte. "They even have yoga and watercolor classes, and the shuttle goes to Target twice a week." I stared at the brochure. A photo of an elderly woman laughing with a salad fork in her hand stared back at me, surrounded by other seniors in a dining hall that looked suspiciously like a conference room, smiling, controlled, contained. "I didn't ask to move," I said flatly. Tyler gave me the kind of patient smile he used to reserve for confused waiters. "We're just thinking ahead. Your safety is our top priority, okay?" I caught the faintest glance exchanged between them. Not concern, calculation. Last week they brought me a tub of protein powder for strength. The week before that, a raised toilet seat. And now, a condo pitch disguised as kindness. I wasn't senile, I was 72. There's a difference. I let them talk. I nodded in all the right places. I even complimented the brochure's layout. But inside, something sharp was clicking into place. Later that night, after they left, I went into the guest room, where Tyler had been staying during his business transitions, and started tidying. That's when I saw the iPad, unlocked, open on the nightstand. I didn't mean to snoop, I meant to dust, but curiosity is a blade that cuts both ways. And when I tapped the screen, I saw my name. A spreadsheet. Elaine Budget. Forecast line after line of entries. Grocery totals, prescription costs, utility averages. A column labeled projected liquidation was filled in with estimated dates. Of what I couldn't tell at first. Then it hit me. They'd been tracking when my assets might be freed up. When I might be. A chill ran through my arms despite the heat humming from the vents. My face flushed, not from embarrassment, but something deeper. Fury, maybe, or recognition. This wasn't concern, this was asset management. I shut the iPad, slid it back into place, and sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. I felt the way my mother looked the day we left my childhood home. Clutching the doorknob too long, knowing something important had been taken without permission. The next morning I didn't call Lorna, I didn't confront Tyler. I called Jack Stein. My estate lawyer for 20 years, Jack had a half-buried office in a brown brick strip mall between a check-cashing place and a martial arts studio. He never changed the waiting room magazines. That's how I knew I could trust him. "You ready to finally take them off the leash?" Jack asked, peering at me over the top of his bifocals. "I want full control until the end. I don't want Tyler touching anything until I'm dead and cold." Jack rubbed his jaw. "You sure? That kind of clause will make probate a battlefield, if anything. Sudden happens." "I've lived through enough battles," I said. "I'm not dying on someone else's timetable." He nodded. "I'll draft the amendment. But you'll need to sign in front of witnesses, and you should have a signal. Something to tell me when it's time to file it." That night, I went home and stood in the middle of my kitchen. Quiet. The wind outside clawed at the windows like it wanted in. I looked around at everything I'd built and protected, until now. I returned to Jack's office the next morning, signed the amendment, a clean black signature on thick ivory stock. Before leaving, I handed the envelope back to Jack and said, "Don't file it yet. You'll know when. You'd be surprised how many houses are sold without their owners knowing." That's what the realtor said the moment I stepped into her office, her nails tapping on the edge of the desk like a warning. Her name was Victoria. Tall, sharp-voiced, the kind of woman who could flip a bungalow before lunch and never wrinkle her blazer. She had eyes that scanned more than listings. I leaned in. "I'd like mine sold with the owner knowing. Quietly. No flyers, no lawn signs, no chatter." She raised an eyebrow. "Off-market?" "Cash only," I said. "I don't have time for pretty." The house Tyler grew up in sat 3 miles away from that office, framed by maples I planted myself and the cracked stone path Harold and I laid one summer before he got sick. For decades, it had been my fortress. Now, it was a chess piece. A week earlier, Tyler had come over with paperwork in hand, wearing a smile 2 shades too bright. "I've been thinking," he began, easing onto the couch beside me. "It'd really help with estate efficiency if my name was on the deed now. You know, streamline everything. Avoid the courts." I looked down at the folder he placed on the coffee table, filled with pre-typed forms. "That's a lot of efficiency," I murmured, picking up a page. "You did all this yourself?" "Well," he shrugged. "Candace helped. She's good with these things. It's just a formality, Mom." I nodded, letting my hand tremble just enough to play the role. "I'll have to think about it. All these documents confuse me." He patted my hand like I was a trembling relic. "Take your time. No pressure." The minute he left, I scanned every page, front and back. Buried in the language was a quiet transfer of ownership, a stealth move masked as love. Victoria had warned me this kind of thing was getting more common. Kids getting an early inheritance without asking, she said, eyes narrowing. And trust me, they don't always wait for a signature. That same night, I dug through the mail Tyler had helped sort the week before. Hidden between a Bed Bath & Beyond coupon and a dental flyer was a thick envelope from a local bank addressed to me, but unopened. I slit it with my letter opener and read the words that made my heart pause. Thank you for securing your $92,000 business line of credit with joint collateral. My name, my credit, no permission, no discussion. The business address listed matched Tyler's Consulting LLC. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat in the dark, staring at the glowing numbers on the microwave and began to write dates, details, phone numbers. I opened a new notebook and labeled it in block letters, contingencies. In the following days, I met Victoria twice more. She walked me through the pre-sale checklist, and I handed over the old deed. The house was mine alone, and I intended to keep it that way, right up until it was someone else's. But not Tyler. Show it off market, I told her. No looky-loos, and no one with my last name. She laughed. You've got bite, Ms. Rothman. I like it. I said nothing, just smiled with my teeth. The following evening, Tyler texted, Hey, talk to a lawyer friend. He says it'd be smart to update that deed soon. Want me to come by tomorrow? Bring coffee? I typed back, Sure, I like hazelnut. Let him bring it. Let him play helpful son. Meanwhile, I'd packed away my birth certificate, bank records, and the original deed into a locked briefcase hidden beneath my old quilting cabinet. The phone rang just after sunset. Victoria's voice crackled through with energy. The phone rang just after sunset. I recognized Victoria's number and picked up before the second ring. Her voice was brisk, electric. Elaine, the buyer is serious, cash offer, but fast. The pen clicked twice in my hand before I placed it down on the polished oak desk. The room was silent, thick with the scent of lemon wood polish and the distant drone of traffic beyond the fourth-story window. The paperwork sat between me and Victoria, thick, final, and irreversible. I looked at the signature line like it might bite. She slid the page toward me, her voice low and even. Once you sign, it's done. Wire hits in 24 hours. No turning back. I nodded once, my hand steady now. No tremble, no second thoughts. Let's finish it, I said. The pen glided across the page, smooth as silk. Elaine Ruth Rothman. Loop, cross, done. I heard the carbon sheet sigh underneath, like the building itself exhaled with me. A closing document, a fresh beginning, an ending cloaked as an exit strategy. Victoria gave a small, satisfied smile. The buyer is en route. She wants to thank you in person. Is that so? I said, folding the pen back into its case. That's rare. The woman who entered 5 minutes later wore soft gray slacks and a modest navy blouse. Her hair was clipped up, her posture calm. Not a speculator, not a flipper. This was someone who cared about roots. Ms. Rothman, she said, extending her hand. Marissa Caldwell. We met, 20 years ago now. You were my mentor at the junior legal aid program. I blinked, and then smiled. Marissa, bright-eyed intern, quick mind. I remembered the way she used to devour case files on her lunch breaks while I told her stories of fighting landlords and defending single mothers. I remember you, I said, surprised by the warmth that broke through. You used to wear Converse to court. She laughed. Still do, just not today. Her offer had come through anonymously at first. Victoria had kept her identity quiet to avoid tipping the market, but now it made sense. Marissa was careful, strategic, and, above all, trustworthy. She was also a person who valued story over square footage. I'll take care of it, she said quietly, holding my gaze. This house has bones, history. I won't gut it. I gave a nod. That was all I needed to hear. Before leaving, I asked Victoria for a moment alone in the conference room. With the door closed, I pulled my phone from my purse and set it against the edge of the table. I pressed record. In the video, I faced the camera directly, my voice calm. Today, I, Elaine Rothman, have willingly sold my primary residence. I am of sound mind and body. The proceeds will be transferred into a private trust under my sole authority. This was my decision, mine alone. Then I held the signed deed up to the lens. Let them try to spin it later. Victoria walked back in moments later, holding a manila folder and an unreadable expression. "We got another offer this morning," she said, her tone slower now. "Didn't mention it because it came in late, way over asking. All cash." I looked up sharply. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "Because something felt off. It came through a shell company, domestic LLC with no website, no track record, but we just got the wire trace back." She flipped the folder open and slid a printout across the table. "LLC owner, Tyler Rothman." My stomach didn't drop. It steeled. He'd tried to buy it behind my back, as if I'd vanish and he'd quietly move in, triumphant. No confrontation, no mess. Just one more signature he expected me to give. My jaw clenched, but I didn't flinch. "He really thought I wouldn't look," I murmured. "Do you want to counter the offer?" Victoria asked. I shook my head. "I want that file." She handed it over. "What now?" I pulled out my phone, tapped Jack Stein's number, and waited for him to answer. When he picked up, I said one sentence. "It's war now." Tyler and Candace plan a retirement celebration for me. Tyler called it a celebration, said it was just a sweet way to honor everything you've done. I pretended to believe him. I nodded when he said they booked the banquet room at the Elms. I smiled when Candace added, "There'll be a microphone. You love those, right?" I even offered to bring cupcakes. In truth, I'd already chosen the shoes I'd wear to war. The invitation said, "Retirement and Reflections, honoring Elaine Rothman." Candace had sent it to their friends, a few of mine, and even the dentist I hadn't seen in 3 years. But nowhere did it mention what they were really planning. A live announcement of my move into Oak Haven, assisted living, politely disguised as downsizing for wellness. I found the draft speech Tyler left open on his laptop one afternoon titled, "Next Chapter for Mom." The bullet points were clean and cruel. New beginnings, safe, supportive environment. Thankful she agreed. I hadn't, not once. But Tyler had always been bold when it came to rewriting reality. I could have canceled the party, said I was sick, refused to show, but my father didn't raise me to run from storms. He raised me to be one. He used to say, "Never let them see you tighten your grip. Hold the hammer like it's part of your hand." I hadn't held a hammer in years, but I'd held silence, and sometimes that's heavier. The morning before the party, I met Lorna at her print shop. She was already waiting inside with 2 coffees and an arched brow. "Still sure about this?" she asked. I slid a flash drive across the counter. "Print everything, double-sided, bound, tabbed, indexed." She whistled low. "Estate documents, medicals, house sale, trust language. You're not pulling punches." "Nope," I said, sipping my drink. "I'm pulling the whole rug." Lorna leaned in. "You sure you want to do this in front of people?" I looked her dead in the eye. "He humiliated me in front of people. This is justice with catering." While she printed, I pulled out my phone and opened a folder titled Receipts. Photos of Tyler's forged deed addendum, screenshots of the credit line he'd taken, the iPad spreadsheet, all tucked inside a slideshow just in case I needed visuals. Lorna helped me prep a USB backup, sealed it in an envelope with a crimson wax seal from her crafting drawer. By dusk, I had everything: the new bound will, trust documents, digital proof, evidence sharp enough to draw blood from a room full of smiles. On the morning of the party, I dressed in navy. Not black, too obvious. Navy was clean, commanding. I pinned Harold's wedding band inside my sleeve for strength. On the way out the door, I opened the safe one last time, placed the heavy envelope inside my handbag, and checked the weight. Perfect. I arrived 10 minutes early. The Elms banquet room smelled of buttered rolls, lemon wax, and floral arrangements that tried too hard. A string quartet tuned up in the corner. Tyler stood by the podium with Candace, both dressed like presenters on a game show. They waved. I waved back. Then I stepped fully into the room, carrying a single heavy envelope like it was my invitation to ruin. The room buzzed with low conversation and clinking forks, punctuated by the occasional polite laugh. Linen tablecloths draped every surface, and flickering candles cast golden halos around everyone's carefully made-up faces. Tyler stood at the center like a conductor, gesturing animatedly with his champagne flute. All right, he said, flashing his best campaign trail smile. Can I steal your attention for a second? He tapped his glass with a spoon, too loudly. The room dimmed in anticipation. I sat quietly at the head of the table, hands folded over the envelope in my lap, back straight as a ruler. My heart didn't pound. It pulsed, slow, steady. I'd practiced this moment in silence 100 times. Tyler grinned. We're here to celebrate an incredible woman, my mother, Elaine Rothman. He paused for light applause. She's had a good run, 72 strong years. A few scattered chuckles. Candace laughed a little too hard. And as we help her step into her next chapter, safer living, less stress, we wanted to honor her journey tonight. This isn't a goodbye. It's a graceful transition. More applause. One woman near the back whispered to her date, Wait, is she moving out of her house? I stood slowly. Tyler froze. The crowd turned as one, all eyes shifting to me like the second act had started early. I took a sip from my glass and placed it gently on the table. Then I stepped toward the podium, not rushed, not hesitant, just deliberate. May I said softly, reaching for the mic. Tyler hesitated. Mom, we, already kind of planned the speech. Exactly, I said. You planned it. He stepped aside. I held the microphone with both hands, like a lifeline and a weapon all at once. Thank you all for coming, I began, voice clear. It's true, I've lived 72 years, and for the last 30 of them, I made a habit of giving time, money, space, silence. Tonight, that habit ends. Nervous laughter fizzled through the room. Candace narrowed her eyes. I reached into the envelope and pulled out a bound copy of my updated will. This is my estate, legally updated, witnessed, final. As of 2 weeks ago, my son Tyler Rothman has been removed from all inheritance considerations. The room gasped like it had been doused in cold water. Forks clattered. One woman coughed and didn't recover quickly. I held up the trust documentation next. My house? Sold. Quietly. Legally. Finalized. The proceeds are in a trust under my control. Tyler will receive nothing. Candace bolted upright. Wait. What? Sit down, I said, not even looking at her. I tapped the remote in my other hand and turned to the screen Victoria had helped me install just an hour earlier. On it played a short video. Me in Jack Stein's office, reading my statement into the camera, holding the deed, time-stamped and witnessed. Then stills of the forged credit agreement, the spreadsheet from Tyler's iPad, all annotated, all clean. Gasps echoed louder now. Candace's face crumpled, not in sadness but recognition. She'd been caught in the crossfire she helped start. I loved my son, I continued, enough to overlook 1,000 small betrayals, but love without respect isn't family, it's fuel, and you've burned through yours. Tyler looked pale. He tried to speak, but I didn't stop. This isn't vengeance. This is correction. I looked Tyler in the eye and said, You treated me like a burden, so now you'll carry your own weight. The banquet hall emptied like a church after scandal, half in hurried silence, the rest in low, broken murmurs. Chairs scraped the floor. Dishes clinked with no rhythm. Eyes that had smiled at me just an hour earlier now shifted away, unsure where to land. But a few stayed close. My old neighbor Henry gave me a silent nod as he passed, slipping a note into my palm that read, Took guts, you did right. His wife patted my shoulder and mouthed the word finally. Balance, that was the word I kept circling in my mind. Not revenge, not spite, just the scales finally evening out. I stepped out into the brisk evening air. The scent of clipped grass and citronella candles from the patio still hung in the breeze. Then I heard the sharp click of heels behind me. Candace. She was alone, which surprised me. No camera-ready expression now. Her makeup had creased at the corners, and the skin beneath her eyes was tight and pale. But her voice still had that blade underneath. "You humiliated him," she snapped. "In front of his colleagues, his clients, people who matter." I turned slowly to face her. He didn't seem concerned about that when he planned my assisted living surprise reveal. Her jaw flexed. "You're unstable." "No," I said quietly. I was silent, and that silence raised him into a man who thinks manipulation is love. My voice is burying him, and frankly, it's overdue. Candace took a step closer, hands clenched. "You think you've won? All you've done is burn every bridge. You're going to die alone." I met her eyes, calm as a tombstone. "Better alone than owned." She scoffed, turned sharply, and stalked back inside, her heels hammering the stone like accusations. Lorna emerged from the corner seconds later, holding my coat. "Told you she'd hiss." I smiled faintly and slipped the coat on. "I'm going home." The next day, Tyler called 3 times. I didn't answer. By the 4th, I picked up. His voice cracked like dry wood. "Can we talk? Just the 2 of us. No games." We met in the corner booth of an old diner off County Road, one he used to beg me to take him to after Little League. He looked worn down. Suit rumpled, tie loose, eyes rimmed with red. "I know I messed up," he began. "But Mom, was that really necessary? You could have just talked to me." I raised an eyebrow. "Like when I asked about the deed and you smiled? Or when you took out a loan using my credit?" His face twitched. "I was trying to keep things from falling apart. You don't understand what it's like to be under pressure." "No," I said, laying a weathered envelope on the table, "but I do understand being used." He opened it and flinched. The original will, burned around the edges, its corners curled and blackened. It smelled faintly of smoke. "It's gone," I said, legally and literally. He looked at me with something between rage and disbelief. "You really hate me that much?" I stood, pulling cash from my purse and dropping it beside my untouched coffee. "No, Tyler, I just finally love myself more." That night, my porch light flickered out. I chalked it up to coincidence, until I saw the envelope on my welcome mat. No return address. Inside, a printout of my court testimony and a message in Sharpie across the bottom. "You're not safe in the dark." I stood in the doorway, heart steady, and looked out into the street. Somewhere beyond the trees, I knew someone was watching. The porch light flickered again the next night. This time, I didn't chalk it up to a coincidence. I unscrewed the bulb and replaced it with a motion sensor flood lamp bright enough to stun a deer. Then I locked every door, deadbolt, latch, chain. The house clicked into place like a puzzle piece closing tight. I'd built this home to raise a child. Now it was holding the line to keep him out. First thing the next morning, I hired someone who didn't blink when I said, "I'm being watched." Her name was Lexi, mid-30s, military posture, blazer over jeans. She walked my perimeter like she was mapping a battlefield. After inspecting the locks, camera placements, and router, she turned to me and said, "You're behind on your digital hygiene, Miss Rothman. Way behind." Within hours, all my passwords were changed: bank, phone, email, utilities. She updated the security system, installed cameras front and back, even offered to do a background sweep on Tyler. I declined. "I already know what I need to know." Jack Stein sent the cease and desist the following day, neatly addressed to Tyler and Candace, citing slander, intimidation, and unauthorized financial action. Jack made it clear: any further attempts to contact or threaten me would be met with immediate legal escalation. "I'm not scared of them," I told Jack over the phone. "You don't have to be scared," he replied, "just protected." Lorna arrived that evening with a suitcase and 2 bottles of wine. "Not staying forever," she said as she unpacked her toothbrush in my guest bathroom. "Just until the air clears." "Thank you," I whispered. We didn't say much that first night. She sat across from me at the kitchen island, laptop open, as I pulled out my old leather-bound journal and began to write. The pen moved like it had a mind of its own. Line after line poured out, memories, betrayals, names, dates, not for revenge, for the record. When I finished, I flipped to a clean page and scrawled a new header, "My Side, Unfiltered." It would become the skeleton of the article I pitched 2 days later to the North Shore Beacon, our town's local weekly. The title: Standing Tall at 72, How One Woman Took Her Power Back. They bit. The editor wrote back within hours. "We'd love to feature this in our Elder Empowerment Spotlight next month. Could we get a photo of you in your garden?" "Only if I'm holding pruning shears," I replied. "I've done enough trimming lately." Lexi helped review the final draft for security risks. Lorna helped smooth the grammar. I hit send with the kind of satisfaction that feels more like surrender, calm, not smug. I had nothing to hide anymore. That night I poured 2 glasses of wine and toasted with Lorna under the back patio string lights. "To what?" she asked. "To closing doors before someone else slams them." But the peace lasted exactly 1 day. The envelope came in a manila packet, hand-delivered to my mailbox. I saw the firm's letterhead and already knew. Tyler. The subject line was stamped in red, "Petition for Elder Financial Abuse and Coercion." He wasn't just angry. He was coming for blood, through the courts. I turned to Lorna, holding the envelope with steady hands. "Looks like my son's suing me, for stealing from myself." The courtroom didn't smell like justice. It smelled like dust, cold coffee, and old paper. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly above as if annoyed by the drama below. I sat at the plaintiff's table, hands folded in my lap, the cuff of my navy blazer neatly covering the edge of my wrist. Across from me, Tyler smirked like this was already won. He looked clean-cut, polished suit, wedding ring off, playing the dutiful son who'd just had to file an unthinkable lawsuit because he loved his mother enough to intervene. The judge, an older woman with sharp eyes and salt-gray hair, flipped through her binder like she'd seen all this before. Because she had. Tyler's lawyer stood, voice dripping honey. "Your Honor, our concern lies with Mrs. Rothman's sudden and extreme financial behavior, liquidating assets, cutting off family, creating complex legal structures. We believe this may be the result of cognitive decline." I didn't blink. Not when the words "cognitive decline" echoed off the wooden walls, not when several heads turned to appraise me like a vintage chair about to collapse. I kept my spine straight, my breath steady. "And what proof do you have of that claim?" the judge asked. Tyler's lawyer opened a thick file. "We've compiled recent text messages, voicemail transcripts, and anecdotal observations from family members regarding confusion, erratic behavior, paranoia." My lawyer, Jack Stein, rose like a wave rising before a crash. "Your Honor," Jack said firmly, "we have certified neuropsychological evaluations from 2 separate licensed professionals attesting to Ms. Rothman's full mental competence. We're also submitting documentation of sustained independent living, consistent financial activity, and 0 indication of impairment." He handed over the folder. The judge took it, nodded once, and kept reading. Tyler shifted in his seat. For the first time, he didn't look so sure of himself. When it was my turn to testify, I walked to the stand alone. No cane, no hesitation. The courtroom hushed as I swore in. Then I looked directly at my son and began. "I spent 30 years raising him," I said, "and another 10 unlearning how to apologize for it." The courtroom stayed silent. I paid for his college, co-signed his first lease, loaned him money for a failed business. I gave until I had nothing left to give but my name, and he tried to take that too. Jack approached the bench with an easel and mounted the spreadsheet from Tyler's iPad, entries of my grocery purchases, credit lines, and medical appointments. "Exhibit C," he said, "client financial surveillance without consent." Then came the forged deed. Exhibit D. Then the business credit line application using my social security number, Exhibit E. Tyler kept his face flat, jaw clenched tight. Candace, seated behind him, watched with the kind of frozen detachment usually reserved for bad movies and funerals. And then, the door at the back of the courtroom opened. A young woman stepped forward, hands clutching a manila folder, eyes scanning nervously. She walked up to the bailiff and whispered something. The bailiff turned to the judge. "Your Honor, we have a witness who's just come forward, relevant to the defense's timeline." The judge raised a brow. "Name?" "Rebecca Chase," the woman said. "I was Mr. Rothman's executive assistant until 2 months ago." Jack turned to me, surprised. I shook my head. Never seen her before. Rebecca was sworn in. Then she spoke. "I was instructed by Mr. Rothman to draft a power of attorney document using a predated template. He said it was in case of future issues with his mother. He signed it electronically but never filed it. I kept a copy in case I needed to protect myself." Gasps rippled through the gallery. Jack stepped forward. "Are you saying Mr. Rothman forged a POA in anticipation of claiming his mother was incompetent?" "Yes," she said, "and he told me to run it through a shell LLC if needed." The judge closed her binder and looked at Tyler like she'd been expecting something to fall apart, and now it had. "I'm ordering an immediate forensic audit of Mr. Rothman's financial activities over the past 2 years," she said. "This court finds no evidence to support the claim of incompetence. Case dismissed." The gavel struck once, clean, loud, final. I stood, knees steady, breath slow. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just walked out. In the hallway, Tyler caught up with me, grabbing my elbow. "You think this is over?" he hissed. "You embarrassed me. You destroyed my life." I looked at his hand, then at his face. "I didn't destroy anything, Tyler," I said quietly. "You did that the second you tried to rewrite me." He stepped back, his mouth hard, his eyes full of heat. "I'll make you regret this," he said through clenched teeth. "I swear it. No apology, no redemption arc, no son who suddenly saw the light. Just a man stripped bare in front of a courtroom and still too proud to feel the cold." The judgment was filed 3 days after the dismissal. Elaine Rothman, mentally competent, financially independent, and legally untouchable. Tyler's countersuit was rejected in full. Worse for him, the judge approved a temporary freeze on all his business assets pending the fraud investigation. His lawyer stepped back from the case the same afternoon. The court record went public that night. A reporter from the Beacon called the next morning. She was polite, respectful, and a little stunned. "You don't sound like someone who just won a war," she said. "I didn't win," I told her. "I reclaimed." The calls didn't stop there. Nonprofits, advocates. One local podcast even wanted to interview me about resistance over 70. I told them I wasn't interested in being a symbol. I was just trying to breathe clean air again. So I packed. Not everything. Just enough. Books, a few photos, the framed college diploma Harold never got to hang before the cancer came, his dog tags, my mother's rosary even though I hadn't believed in it for years. I walked from room to room of the house I once fought to keep and felt no pull anymore. That's the thing about burning bridges. You don't miss the view once you've crossed. I found the envelope Harold had written me on our 25th anniversary, tucked into the back of an old recipe binder. The ink had faded, but the words hit clean. "Leave behind what breaks you, or it'll keep breaking you, even when you think it's done." I read it twice. Then I folded it gently, placed it in my suitcase, and zipped it closed. Before I left, I made one quiet stop. First Sunrise Foundation, a fund that provided emergency grants for senior women caught in financial crises. I handed the check to the woman at the front desk. She opened her mouth to speak, to ask, to marvel at the size of it. "Just help someone like me," I said, "before she has to become someone like me." Back at home, I met with Jack Stein for the final round of paperwork. New executor appointment, end-of-life directives, successor trustees. Every page had a piece of my future sealed inside it. I've never seen someone do so much damage control so calmly, Jack said, flipping through the signed pages. "Call it adrenaline," I replied. "Or maybe clarity." He tapped the final file shut. "It's all locked down, ironclad. If your son even breathes near this trust, the court will snap it shut before he finishes the exhale." "Good." I walked him to the door. The late autumn air had gone sharp, crisp with dry leaves and a faint whiff of chimney smoke drifting from someone's backyard. I wasn't staying through another winter. I didn't need to. Later that evening, as I sipped tea on the back porch beside Lorna, watching the sky slide from coral to violet, my phone buzzed against the table. I didn't look at it right away. Something about the stillness felt sacred. When I finally picked it up, it was a text from an unknown number. It's me. Just one conversation, one final meeting. I need to explain. I stared at the message for a long time before turning to Lorna. He wants a last word. I'm just not sure if I should let him have it. Tyler arrived 5 minutes late, still wearing the cologne he used when he wanted something. Sharp, overcompensating, a scent too young for the man he pretended to be. The hostess had already seated me at a small corner table, tucked beneath a hanging fern and a quiet jazz speaker. I picked this place on purpose. Public, but not crowded. Intimate, but not forgiving. He spotted me, straightened his blazer, and walked over with a limp sort of smile. "Mom," he said. "Thanks for coming." I didn't stand. I nodded once and gestured to the chair across from me. "Menu's there. I've already ordered." He sat. The pause between us stretched long and taut. "So," he said, fiddling with his water glass, "you've probably heard. Candace is staying with her sister. My business accounts are frozen. My firm's pulling out of our contract deals until the audit's over." I sipped my tea. "You wanted to explain. Go on." Tyler leaned forward, voice softening. "I was trying to protect what was mine, what was ours. I made mistakes. God, I know that. But everything I did was to build something for my family." "You forged documents, Tyler." He winced. I panicked. Everything was crumbling. And you just cut me off without even a warning. "I gave you 30 years of warnings," I said. "You just called them support." A server arrived and placed a plate of grilled trout and greens in front of me. I thanked her, then nodded for him to continue. Tyler waved off ordering. Appetite gone. He ran a hand through his hair. "I was raised better than this." "No," I said quietly. "You were raised to believe better was always waiting for you, whether you earned it or not. That's the difference." He blinked. "I kept waiting for you to grow into the man you promised to become. But you didn't grow. You conned. You took. And then you gaslit me when I noticed." His mouth tightened. "You really won't give me a second chance?" I set my fork down, leveled my gaze at him. "You had 100. The words didn't rise in anger. They landed in silence. He looked at the table like it might explain something he'd missed. "So that's it? You're walking away? From your only child?" "I'm walking away," I said, "from the version of you that would have let me rot in a memory care unit while you auctioned off my legacy." He exhaled sharply, as if I'd finally named the sin too ugly for him to swallow. "You always think you're right," he muttered. "No," I replied. "I just stopped pretending I was wrong." The server brought the check. Tyler instinctively reached for it, then hesitated. I nodded to the leather bill folder. "You've had enough practice spending my money. You can cover lunch." I stood, tucked my scarf into my coat, and left him. Sitting there, his hands on the table, eyes cast down, the weight of something finally landing where it belonged. Outside, the wind cut clean through my coat, but I welcomed the chill. It made everything feel honest. That night, just past 11, my phone buzzed once on the kitchen counter. "Candace. Filed tonight. I'm done." She filed for divorce. I stared at the screen for a beat, then smiled faintly. Some endings don't need an audience. The next day, the manila stack on my dining table didn't look like a revolution. No fanfare, no verdicts, no names scrawled in red ink, just a row of labeled tabs, inked signatures, notarized stamps. But this was the ending I wrote myself. The final estate plan, revocable trust, executed, healthcare directive, confirmed, successor trustee, appointed, will, rewritten, locked, and legally bulletproof. Jack had walked me through every clause, every what if. No gaps left for interpretation, he'd said, his tone satisfied. Even your obituary can't be edited without your say. I smiled at that. Not because I cared what the obituary said, but because it reminded me I'd made it to the part of the story where I didn't need anyone else's version of me. The house was quiet, but not hollow. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window in wide golden bars. Dust motes drifted lazily through the beam like they had time. I hadn't turned on the radio. Silence had finally stopped feeling like judgment. Now it felt like sovereignty. Tyler sent one last email. No subject line, just 3 sentences. You think you've won. You broke the family. I'll never forgive you. I read it once, then hit block. No reply. No indulgence. No second chances for someone who thought love was a contract he could edit at will. Then I revoked his access to the family archive. Photos, health records, ancestry data, all of it. I changed the passwords, rerouted the cloud, locked the hard drive. If he wanted history, he'd have to live with what he remembered, not what he could control. I went out to the garden just before dusk. The air smelled of damp soil and blooming jasmine, that late summer sweetness curling against the back of my throat. I planted a new patch of rosemary last week. Lorna had teased me. Symbolic, huh? Memory and all that? Maybe. Or maybe I just liked the way it filled the space where weeds once claimed ground. Lorna showed up like clockwork at 6 p.m., 2 glasses and a bottle of wine under her arm. No court dates, no affidavits, no long faces, she declared. Just peace. We sat under the arbor, the trellis laced with ivy I hadn't bothered to tame this year. The wind rustled softly through it, a whisper of old things letting go. To choosing yourself, she said, raising her glass. To remembering how, I replied. We drank. The wine was dry and tart with a hint of plum. It sat on the tongue like a truth you finally didn't have to swallow whole. For the first time in months, I didn't feel like I was preparing for something. I wasn't defending, documenting, protecting. I was simply existing, present, rooted. That night, as I washed our glasses and tucked the leftovers into the fridge, I noticed a thick white envelope slipped into my front door frame. No postage, no return address, just my name in sharp blue ink. I opened it carefully, expecting more noise, more fallout. Instead, it was an invitation, clean cardstock, gold-trimmed edges, letterhead from the National Elder Rights Alliance. You are cordially invited to speak at the Fall Summit in Washington, D.C. Theme, Autonomy After Adversity. I stared at it, heart still. No panic, no dread, just a blooming question. Was I ready to turn survival into story? 3 days later, I went to the summit. The ballroom at the summit was cooler than expected, heavy with the scent of fresh linen and industrial carpet, humming with anticipation. The rows of folding chairs filled slowly with advocates, attorneys, policymakers, and survivors in soft cardigans and steel spines. Behind the podium, my name was printed in crisp serif font on a modest placard, Elaine Rothman, guest speaker, Autonomy After Adversity. I waited off stage with my notes folded neatly in my hand, though I hadn't looked at them in days. My fingers rested on the crease like muscle memory, not nerves. I didn't come to perform. I came to testify. The host, a woman named Renee with silver curls and a voice that could slice through any room, introduced me with warmth and a hint of awe. Our next speaker fought for her voice, her rights, and her future, and didn't stop until she reclaimed every inch of it. Applause rose, not thunderous, steady, respectful, like a tide rolling in. I stepped up, took the mic, and told them everything, not as a victim, not as a martyr, as a woman who'd been underestimated by everyone who forgot how sharp aging hands can be. I walked them through the subtle erosion, how control masqueraded as care, how silence became strategy, and how standing still doesn't always mean surrender. I described the spreadsheet on the iPad, the forged documents, the courtroom, the wine on the patio when it was all finally over. I finished with a line I hadn't planned. They tried to shrink me to fit their version of my life. I outgrew it instead. The applause this time was louder. standing. Some of them wiped their eyes. I did not. As I stepped off the stage, a young man approached, mid-20s, long-limbed and angular. Something about his eyes, wide, tired, familiar. He hesitated before speaking, his voice almost lost in the noise. "Ms. Rothman?" I turned. "Yes?" He swallowed hard. "I'm Daniel, Tyler's son." The world tipped for a second. Just a second. The rest of the room faded. "I didn't know the truth," he said. "We weren't close. My mom left when I was a baby. He told me stories, but nothing like this." I saw it then, the ache in him. Not just for what his father did, but for what he never got to see. He looked like someone trying to rewrite himself in real time. "I just wanted to say thank you," he added, "for showing me what strength looks like." I nodded once, then did something neither of us expected. I pulled him into a hug. It wasn't long or theatrical, just solid. Two strangers tethered by blood they didn't choose but could finally face. News crews circled after that. A local affiliate ran a piece titled 72 and Unbent, One Woman's Battle for Autonomy. My inbox flooded. Interview requests, speaking invites, letters from women in 23 states. One message simply read, "You gave me permission to walk away." A week later, my face appeared on the homepage of a national elder rights network. Beneath it, "When mothers become their own heirs." Still, I didn't expect the envelope. Thick, ivory, wax sealed. It came by courier, addressed in elegant handwriting to Mrs. Elaine Rothman, care of herself. Inside, a card from a publishing house in New York, one I recognized. The note read, "We've followed your journey. We believe the world is ready to read it. Would you consider writing a memoir?" I read it twice. Then I opened a new notebook, clicked my pen, and wrote the title that had been waiting for years, Inheritance, What I Took Back. Next evening, I hosted a dinner party. The table was round, not long. No podium, no place cards, no hierarchy. Just chipped plates that didn't match, linen napkins folded like tulips, a playlist humming soft jazz beneath the clink of forks, and the kind of laughter that filled more than just the room. My dinner party, mine. 8 guests, no more. The chairs were filled with people who didn't see me as an obligation. There was Lorna, of course, half a glass deep into her second Merlot, already threatening to dance once dessert hit. Across from her sat Marissa Caldwell, the woman who bought my house and kept every promise to preserve it. Her partner beside her, kind-eyed and quick with jokes. Daniel sat 2 seats to my left. Tyler's son, but none of his father's shadow. We'd kept in touch since the summit. Emails turned into coffee, then check-ins, then something quietly familial. No bloodline owed affection, but sometimes history rerouted and softened. Tonight he brought a lemon tart and asked if he could call me Elaine instead of Mrs. Rothman. I told him he could call me whatever made him feel like he belonged here. The scent of roasted garlic and rosemary still lingered in the warm air, mingled with the sweetness of candied yams and the toasted sugar crust of the crème brûlée cooling on the counter. Someone complimented the pot roast, and Lorna immediately claimed credit, even though we'd cooked it together. I watched their hands move, their mouths form stories, the way heads tilted when someone else spoke. There was no performance in this room, no manipulation disguised as care, no tally of who owed whom what. I thought of all the meals I'd made in silence, the ones where I served last, ate cold, smiled through exhaustion. The nights Tyler brought business partners over and never introduced me properly. The birthdays where the gift was a gym membership or a medical lecture. This meal had no performance, no trap, no shell company under the table, just people, just peace. I stepped out to the garden for a moment after the plates were cleared. The wind was soft, the late light casting amber streaks over the lawn. I sat on the swing Harold built when Tyler was 5. The wood creaked with memory. A letter sat folded in my coat pocket, written earlier that day, to myself, not the woman I used to be, but the one who got us both here. Dear Elaine, you did it. You got out. You didn't just survive them. You outlived the version of yourself that needed their approval. You built something clean, something yours. Now rest, or dance, or write, or leave the dishes until morning. You earned it. E. The screen door opened behind me. "Hey," Lorna called. "They're waiting on you." "To make a toast. Don't make me say something nice in your place." I smiled, slid the letter back into my pocket, and followed her in. The guests quieted when I raised my glass. The light from the chandelier warmed the room like a hearth. All eyes turned toward me, not with expectation, but with ease. "No big speech," I said. "Just this. I spent a long time being erased at my own table. Now I sit at one that feeds me back." A few heads nodded. A couple murmured, "Amen." I looked around one last time. No Tyler, no Candace, no absence that needed filling. Outside, the world kept turning. Somewhere, Candace was working retail in a strip mall outside Springfield. A friend sent me a picture, her in a red polo, faking a smile. Tyler hadn't been seen in months. The silence was the closest thing he'd ever given me to a gift. I clinked my glass gently against Lorna's.